And it's lights out.
Welcome back to another episode of Drive Thru Penalty. I'm Sean. This is my father, Craig, and we are excited because
I know I'm excited.
the first Grand Prix of the year is finally here.
Finally, it's race week. So we're back for the Formula One pool. That's how we're going to initiate our podcast today. And everybody starts with $100 million. Sounds like a healthy budget. It's really easy to spend that $100 million, but my son Sean here is going to make an attempt to show you what he's going to spend his $100 million on.
All right, so we're here on the F1 website. We are in the Manage Team section under the Fantasy tab, and we're going to build our team. So just like everybody else, we start with $100 million. We have 5 driver slots, 2 constructors, and we want to build the best team possible for the amount of money we have to spend. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to spend $100 million exactly, but you'll see as you go through the process, as you start choosing drivers you'd like to pick and constructors, you're going to get pretty close, and it's pretty easy to spend. So from what I found last year, it's really, really important to have 2 strong constructors. I know you have 5 driver slots, but what worked best for me last year, I like Craig said, I won the league. It was really competitive, and the top contenders had a very similar strategy. That consisted of 2 strong constructors throughout the entire season. Typically, it was 1 premium driver and 4 back markers. So I'll show you what that might look like for me to start the year. And we're going to play around with our money and see what we can do and how we can best spend this. So as you all know, I'm a Ferrari fan. I do think Ferrari's going to have a good season. So I'm going to start with the constructors and work backwards. So let's click that constructors tab. Here you're going to notice every team has a price beside them, ranging from 6.2 million all the way up to McLaren, which costs you 30 million. Big difference. And to be honest, it's a big difference in points. And my opinion, you want to have the big guys up top. So I'm going to start by choosing Ferrari on my team. I do like McLaren, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to afford McLaren and Ferrari and do what I'm going to do. So we're going to start with, let's say, Ferrari and Mercedes. That's already cut half of our budget down, and we only have 50 million to spend. So let's see if we can do that. We're going to hit the drivers tab, and we are going to pick our 5 drivers. Based on the amount of money these guys cost, I know I'm not going to be able to have a Lando Norris and a Max Verstappen on the team, nor will I be able to have Lando and Charles or even Lando and George. So I'm going to say I'm going to throw Charles in there just to see what I can do. And I only have $24 million left, so let's just go all the way to the bottom and pick the back markers and then see what kind of money we have left over and where we can make our adjustments. So to be honest, I like Gabriel. I think, he's valued super low right now. Nobody knows what to expect out of him. But let's say he puts a couple good races in. That $6 million is going to turn to $8 million, maybe $9 million. It's going to take some time, but let's say you do get there. You can then sell Gabriel back to the market, and that profit you made, you can now spend on a new driver. And ultimately, throughout the season, you want to upgrade your drivers. And maybe halfway through the season, you can have 2 premium constructors and even 2 premium drivers. So we're going to put Gabriel in there. Let's throw Isaac. Again, who knows what this guy's going to do? He might surprise everybody, and that might be an absolute steal at 6.2 million. We're not going to know until we start seeing some racing. So just for this video's sake, let's throw Isaac in there. And I really like Nico. I think I'd have him on my team regardless. And just to show you, we can't even afford another driver, having the 2 constructors with Charles on the team and the absolute cheapest driver. So that's not going to work. We only have 5.7 million to spend. I'm going to downgrade Charles, who is 25.9 million. And instead of him, I am going to put my guy, Lewis Hamilton, in. I have $7.4 million left to spend. And if we go all the way to the bottom here, who can I afford? I can afford Esteban, Jack, and Ollie. That's tight. We know Esteban, and we know what he can do. He can put up points, so that's probably a smart option. Jack might surprise us all. He's fighting for his life right now. He's fighting for that seat. He knows that Franco is just waiting on the sideline for him to make a mistake. So either that does him well, and he performs knowing that there's pressure on him, or does the complete opposite and he the bed. So I don't know if I want to put my money into Jack right now, but I might wait and see how he does through the first couple of races. Put him on my team later. For now, I'm going to put Ollie in there, and as you can see, I've basically used most of my money. Which leaves me a little wiggle room next week. If I want to upgrade, you're allowed to do 2 transfers a week. If you don't do your transfers, 1 carries over to the next week, allowing you 3 picks. But we're going to stay pretty active. I can see myself making 2 transfers every week unless this just works out incredibly well. Other options. Let's say we don't go Ferrari Mercedes and we want to do something a little bit different. Maybe we do something a little bit different and we go Ferrari Williams. This is kind of taking a risk because we know most of our points are coming in through constructors. So if we don't think Williams is going to be, 5th, 6th, 7th place in the races, I don't know if this is a good idea. But what this will allow me to do is potentially put in 2 really good drivers. So for instance, I could maybe squeeze Lewis in there again. Maybe I can get Carlos in there. I think Carlos is great. I think he's going to do well in the Williams. And as you saw in preseason testing, he put out some pretty fast laps, and this might actually be a great pick. I have 22.5 left to spend. I can probably put 3 bottom drivers in here. Let's see. Let's put Gabriel back in there. Again, I really like Nico. And actually, this gives me 10 million left to spend. And I could even get Yuki in here. So to be honest, this is a pretty good squad. You'll never know until race day. But for those of you who are new, there are some really good resources there out on the internet. And one of my favorites is F1 Fantasy Tools. You can go in there, you can input your team, and it will give you a prediction as to what they think your team will put out in terms of fantasy points. It'll show you what popular picks are, and it'll give you a good reading of kind of where you are and what you're hoping to make in terms of points. I hope this helps. There are 6 chips. We're not going to activate any chips this week, and we'll look into that in another video. But for those of you who are making your picks for the first time, it is unlimited transfers until the first race starts. So don't worry about locking in your team and not being able to go back in. Until qualifying starts, you are good to go and you can make as many changes as you want. Keep in mind, one of these drivers you're going to be able to put a 2 times DRS boost on. Basically what that does is just going to multiply their score by 2, whatever they finish the week with. So you obviously want to put that on your top driver pick. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below. And I look forward to seeing what kind of teams you guys are building.
So, Sean, why don't we talk about constructors in this episode now? I'll give you a kind of, I'm guessing that you think Ferrari is going to be the constructors champion this year. I could be wrong, but I'm guessing it's going to be McLaren, and there's people out there who are going to say it's Red Bull. I do like the sleeper team Haas. I do like the sleeper team Haas, and I also really like the sleeper team Williams. I think I will probably get my 3 extra drivers out of those 2 teams. And I don't know if I'm going to use a Haas or a Williams as my second constructor. But I guess we all have to kind of decide which constructor we like right now. And like I said, I'm leaning towards McLaren.
Good question. I don't think anybody really knows the answer to that. I'm a little bit biased. I'm a Ferrari guy. You probably will see Ferrari on my team in week 1. Who the second constructor is, I'm not sure yet. I really like Williams, as I said. But then again, you can always throw McLaren in there, downgrade your 5 drivers to be able to afford that lineup. But we'll see. We're going to wait right until the last moment. I think McLaren's going to be strong. How could they not be? They look great. Ferrari, their pace was excellent. Carlos Sainz in the testing this year, he looked incredible. It's hard to gauge, true numbers and stats based on the results of the preseason testing.
Well, it's kind of like preseason baseball. I mean, when they have those cars out on the test track, you don't know what tires are running. You don't know if they got a full tank of gas. You don't know if they're sandbagging. And I can bet you that Max Verstappen is a sandbagger, and he'll open up wide on Friday and qualify. But when we have to pick, so let's say that this could be a sleeper pick for somebody out there. Let's say I'm going with McLaren, and most guys that went with McLaren would think that Lando Norris is the guy. This is where I have a little different thinking. I like Oscar Piastri. And why do I like him? I like him, probably costs a little less, but I like him because the race is in Australia and this is his home turf. And I always like to think that it's like a home game in the NBA, I guess. You can feel it, the cheering. You're treated like a rock star all week long, and he's also really hard to pass. So if he could somehow get up into the front row on the grid, I think he, barring no trouble, I think he might walk away with the checkered flag.
That also puts a little bit extra pressure, though, knowing that all eyes are on you, and you know what, some guys might fall into the trap of that. But Oscar seems cool, calm, and collected, and honestly, I think that's a good pick for week one. I expect him to do really well, and keep your eye out on Oscar.
So the Australian Grand Prix this year, last year they had an attendance of 452,000 people. And the most that have ever attended a Formula One event was in the UK, and that was 480,000. And all indications are that this weekend in Australia, attendance will go over 500,000. So that's kind of a neat place in the world. I don't know if they all turn the wrong way when they're there or what goes on, but when they go through those turnstiles, they might set another record in Formula One.
Do we like Aston Martin this year?
See, I think of Aston Martin, I think of Canada, because the team principal is Canadian and his son drives on the team. Listen, they did a really exciting thing. They signed Mr. Newey, and they signed him for 150 million euros over 5 years. And we talked about, when we talked last week about the difference when Ferrari signed Hamilton, their stocks went up. Aston Martin went up probably about 50% when they signed in Newey. Now, I don't think you're going to see Newey do too much for the team this year. They've really brought him in to work on the 2026 car, because that's when all the new regulations are coming in. But there was an interesting interview this week from Ralf Schumacher. If you don't remember him, that's Michael Schumacher's brother, and Ralf Schumacher was a Formula One racer as well. He interviewed Newey, and Newey kind of let on to him that he was very pleasantly surprised with the work ethic of Lance Stroll. And he thinks that Lance Stroll deserves to be here after he's seen what he does behind the scenes. So there's a lot of Stroll haters, so I'm just kind of messing with you on that one, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I mean, as a Canadian, I would love to see Lance do well. It's unfortunate that he gets a lot of hate out there, and he might have deserved it a couple of weeks, when he beached himself and this and that. But look, I think having Fernando Alonso as his mentor, if you want to call it that, and Adrian Newey on board, it's going to be an interesting season for Aston Martin.
So now I'm going to give you a little history on a road trip that I made in 1975 to Watkins Glen for the 25th U.S. Grand Prix. I have the program. If you remember, in 72, it was $1. So in 1975, we're at $2. And interesting, this was on October the 5th, and it was the 14th race out of 14 races. The 13th race which was at Mossport in Ontario, I couldn't go to because it was canceled. It was canceled because there was money problems. So I can't recall if we actually went up there for the weekend and then they canceled the race on the Sunday, which I think they might have. But anyways, we were lucky enough to get in somebody's van and drive down to Watkins Glen, which is upstate New York. And quite interesting. Niki Lauda had already won the year championship. Emerson Fittipaldi was second. Emerson Fittipaldi, I think, got the pole position for this race, but Niki Lauda did win, and he won substantially. And just like the race we talked about last week, second and third were McLarens, and the McLarens were different drivers this time. It was Emerson Fittipaldi and Johan Mass.
So I've always wondered, like, if these drivers, you know, they're around today and they were to have to drive in the cars of today's era, like, how do you think they would do? Do you think they'd like the cars? Do you think they'd be competing at the same level they are?
You know, I don't think they were as in top-notch physical shape as today's drivers. I don't think in 1975 they were doing neck exercises and everything. They were rolling around those cars, you know, like bumper cars. But the courage that these guys had, what they had to do to actually finish a race safely was way beyond, I think, what you see now, because over the years they've really dedicated themselves to the safety of the sport. And Jackie Stewart was certainly one of the initiators in that, in demanding more safety for the drivers, and sometimes saying, you know what, we shouldn't even be racing. But like, there's stories where you know, James Hunt, you had to sit with your feet like this in the front of the car to get at the pedals. And James Hunt actually cut the ends off his shoes so that he could get his toes on the pedals and stuff. I says, like, I can't imagine that Lewis Hamilton's cutting off the toes on his shoes. Can you?
Probably not. Probably not. Thanks for another history lesson there, Craig. Lots of exciting stuff to look forward to. We're only a couple days away. Let us know down below who your prediction is. I think you know who mine is. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. We'll see you next week.